somewhere outside of Wayhaven. Soft voices echo inside my head. I frown against the pounding that's beginning to beat a painful rhythm inside my skull. Blinking my eyes open, I squint them as I'm greeted by the cold, blinding glare of an artificial light and also by a group of familiar faces. Nat, Ava, Farah, Morgan, and Mum. I blink a couple of times as though the image might be a mirage, but she's definitely there. She gives a bright smile, one that contrasts with the starkness of the room. Bright white walls stinge against my blurry vision, and the drone of the fanlight above is interspersed with the occasional beep of medical machines. The machines flank either side of the hospital bed I'm on. And yet it's definitely not the hospital in Wayhaven. Wait, what happened? My voice comes out hoarse. I wince at the pain which courses through my limbs as I try to sit up further in the surprisingly comfy, if simple, bed. Nat places a gentle but firm hand on my shoulder. You shouldn't try to move yet. Fine, Morgan says from behind the others with a dismissive shake of her head. You're damn lucky they are. Rebecca growls at her, and my brows arch in surprise to see Morgan actually skulk away at her words. Do you remember what happened? Ava asks, stepping forward to join the others standing at the edge of the bed. I frown, trying to think past the pain radiating out from the top of my head. There was a fight? The fuzzy memories begin to clear. The attackers, they were sick. Even with the piercing headache, it's hard to forget the assailants' grey skin and milky eyes. I shudder at the remembered thought, and then it hits me. My eyes widen and my gaze shoots up to Nat. You healed. I saw you heal. Ah, so you remember that part too, Rebecca says with a frown, stepping away with a sigh. The memory plays out like a movie in my head, a very clear, very vivid movie. The gash had been deep, bloodied, maybe not fatal, but definitely in need of stitches, and then it had just mended. Hmm. So, explain. What you saw was real, my mother snaps. My mother missed the line there. My mother says after a long, quiet moment. Telling them is a bad idea, Morgan snaps. She receives a frown from Ava and turns away, slumping against the wall with a sour expression. Hmm. Jules' identity is known now. The agency has given them clearance to a certain level. They need to be informed. There's a heavy tone of regret to Rebecca's words as she says them. I arch a brow. So is someone finally going to tell me what's really going on? Nat chuckles softly. Yes. You know I work for the government, Rebecca begins, seeming almost hesitant to speak. I nod. But it's not just our government, she continues, glancing around at the others in the room. It's for all of them. All of them? I can't help but repeat that statement. It's a global organization, Nat explains. One that the world's governments all contribute to, but all try to pretend doesn't exist. Why? The questions just keep blurting out. Because we aren't meant to exist, Farah says, having gotten a lot closer without me noticing. I flinch at her sudden proximity and the long smile on her face. I don't understand. Rebecca smiles, sitting on the bed next to me. Stay where I am. The bed dips beneath her slight weight. I keep my gaze on hers while waiting for her to give some kind of explanation that will actually make sense. She straightens herself, keeping the small smile on her face. The goal of the agency is to deal with certain things that the general populace is unaware of, things people don't want to know about. To keep the things that go bump in the night to people's imaginations, Nat says, leaning against the counter and shoving her hands in her pockets. You know, the stuff that humans can't handle, Farah adds. I tense. Humans? There are many things in this world that are kept secret from the public, Rebecca says, but that secrecy is necessary to protect the general populace and to protect our agents. The information is swirling like a blender in my head. Why to protect your agents? Because we're special, Farah says with a grin, leaning on the bed closer towards me. Ava yanks her back, the young agent almost stumbling into the wall behind. Enough, Farah. Farah gives a soft chuckle, one Morgan joins in with from the corner of the room. I turn to Rebecca, about ready to plead for a straight-up answer. She gives me one. They're vampires. The words replay about 100 times in the space of a second in my mind. They're vampires. My mind finally stops swirling enough for me to respond. Uh-huh. Okay then. I blink a couple of times, the words still taking some time to fully process in my bruised mind. Farah arches a brow. That's it? I frown. I think it's probably going to take a bit of time to process. That's understandable, Nat replies, an encouraging smile on her face. Vampires? Even the word sounds ridiculous to think. Rebecca slides from the bed back onto her feet in a simple, graceful motion. Why don't I show you around our facility and try to explain further? She gestures to the darkened hallway beyond the door, and I swallow down the thoughts of what else may be out there. Outside the medical room. The facility we're now walking in, after I got dressed into a boringly plain grey t shirt and dark trousers, is located under the abandoned bank just outside of the big city, my mother tells me. There are agency facilities like this hidden throughout not just the country, but the whole world. I shake my head, unable to picture such a massive, complicated place built so close to the city, and no one has ever known about it. I can only show you some of the facility. Yeah, she can only show me the vampire stuff. And when we don't talk about the Bigfoot and the aliens and all of that, we keep those secrets from you too. Uh, Rebecca says as she leads me through another set of wide corridors. You haven't obtained full clearance for all of it. We move further into the bunker-like building. Tubular concrete hallways line our path, the blandness of the place lifted only occasionally by a bright red or yellow pipe that clonks at random intervals, sounding like it could do with a good service. Fluorescent lights hum from above, and my mind flurries with ideas about what might lay behind the thick green steel doors latched to the walls at regular intervals. I'm not sure if I should be concerned by the smoky burning smell that wafts out from under some of them. The whole thing is much blander than I was hoping for when concerning the supernatural. One of the doors is slightly ajar, and I find my steps faltering to a stop to stare inside. It looks like some kind of training room. Padded mats line the floor. A selection of exercise equipment is spread around the edge, and there are even a selection of blank-faced training dummies set up at one end. A man steps onto the mats, tall, toned, and obviously there to get training done, and stares at the other end of the room. Then, in a brilliant spark of light, the man appears before one of the dummies and slices its head off with a simple flick of his wrist. Frown and quickly look away. The unbelievable display makes me frown. I quickly glance away, rubbing a hand over the back of my neck. Excuse me, a female voice says. I glance up, realizing I'm blocking the hallway, and quickly move to one side. Sorry. No problem, she replies and makes to continue on down the corridor, but not before her eyes flash black. I stare after her, not even sure how to take in what I just saw. Rebecca eventually steps back up beside me, a comforting hand coming to rest on my back. I know it's difficult to know how to process all of this. Sure. I say nothing, just shake my head, but I let her hand remain. A slight touch helps calm my nerves at least a little. She offers an understanding smile as well as a nod. I'm always here for you. I hope you know that. I fall back against the opposite wall for support, the cold concrete seeping through my clothing and making me shiver. My gaze finds the gap in the door once again. This time the man severs one of the dummies in half with what looks like a bone protrusion from his forearm. I may have been accepting with the vampires, but this really is a lot to take in. I shift my gaze to the floor. This is really happening. The man inside the training room shifts into action again, catching my attention. Rebecca seems to notice where my gaze has fallen and moves forward to gently close the door. That's Agent Fuller, she says. He's a vampire too? I ask, the question spilling out of me before I can stop it. No, she says with a soft chuckle. He's a demon. Just nod. I give a slow nod, unsure what exactly to say to that. How do you respond to someone telling you that fantasy is reality? Rebecca steps in front of me, placing her hands firmly on my arms and making me stand a little straighter. Jules, please look at me. I do as she asks. I didn't want to bring you into this world, but your life may be at risk. If it takes you knowing the truth to save you, then that is what I'll do. Her grip softens, her hands dropping away. I won't lose you. Staring over at her, I can see she really means it. Her face is drawn and pale, fear glinting in her eyes, and for once she looks older, tired. She suddenly faces me with a straight expression. There are things we still need to discuss. Follow me. Inside the facility's common room. So, how do you think a detective's taken the revelation? Farah asks, plopping down into one of the padded cotton armchairs. Morgan gives a shrug, pushing herself onto a side table to sit. I don't know. Haven't seen a human accept the idea of vampires so easily before. Farah looks over her shoulder to where Ava and Nat are standing together near the door. What about you two? Want to make a bet on how a detective does? Nat frowns deeply. We're not betting on the condition of a person who has just had their reality shattered. Geez, you're no fun, Farah replies with a heavy breath. What do you think will happen? Ava asks quietly, turning her back on the other two and focusing on Nat. Nat sighs. I'm not sure. I'm not even sure what the plan is for after Jules has been told. Hopefully the agency will force them to stay in the facility so that we can get out there and actually do our job of catching this guy, she replies. Watching that detective is like keeping watch over a starved vampire who's just seen blood. That's rather overdramatic, don't you think? Nat chuckles. Personally, I've enjoyed working with the detective. It's been refreshing getting out into the world again, a world beyond the agency. Don't let the higher-ups hear you say that, Ava replies with a smirk. I can't imagine they would be too happy about one of their best agents wanting to break free. I wouldn't go that far, she shrugs, but working more within the human world isn't something I would object to. Ava lets out a disgusted scoff. I can't think of anything worse. Once again, we agree to disagree, my old friend, Nat says, clapping Ava on the back and giving a bright smile. The expression fades a little as their situation once again hits them. I guess we'll find out soon enough about the detective. Ava stiffens and gives a tense nod, turning to look at the door with a frown. In the facility cafeteria. Sitting in the empty cafeteria, I've managed to find most of my senses again, though my head still aches as it's stuffed to bursting with all of the new information. The boringness of the room matches the concrete corridors we had just left, a chill settling over me at the sheer size of it. Rows of perfectly straight canteen tables line the room, and the empty seats can't help but make me wonder how many people, that is, how many creatures, are in the facility. More artificial light pours down from above, with not a window in sight. Even in the vastness of the room, it feels suddenly very constricting. At least it doesn't smell like smoke anymore, just disinfectant and cleanliness. Overly clean, like everything natural about this place has been stripped and wiped away. Suddenly I want the burning scent back. Here you go, Rebecca says, sliding a mug of hot chocolate in front of me across the beige plastic table. I grip the cup and take a sip, knowing the sugar will help with the shock. It's obviously something Rebecca knows too, and I can't help but wonder if it was something she'd needed when she'd found out about all of this for the first time. She shuffles onto the bench opposite me, leaning her elbows on the table and sipping at her own drink. Steam curls from the mug, dancing in front of her closed eyes and into her light brown hair. It's strange to see her so at ease. Apparently, my learning this secret has lifted an extreme weight from her mind. I remember what it was like to be told about all of this, she begins, placing down her mug but still staring into it. How all of the nightmares from books and movies and our fears are real. And that they're working for our governments. Let's not forget that part, I reply, sipping at the chocolate. The hot liquid burns against my throat, but it's enough to help shock some feeling back into my limbs. They don't work for the governments, they work for the agency. She flicks her gaze up to mine. And if they didn't work here, what do you think they'd be doing? I shrug. I suppose I have no idea. Well, unfortunately, you're going to have to. She shifts further forward on the bench, her voice echoing from the concrete walls. There are some supernatural beings who don't want to comply with the treaties. Treaties? I interrupt her with the question so fast my drink almost spills over my lips. Rebecca passes me a napkin, touching at me in the exact same manner she used to when I was young and spilled food down my front. The treaties are pacts, she explains, signed between the agency and supernaturals. They're updated and signed at regular intervals to keep them up to date with a fast-changing world. She grips her mug tighter. Most supernaturals aren't from our world, but they manage to find a way here through cracks between dimensions, and once they're here, they can't get back. The treaties detail the terms by which each species can remain in this world and be under the agency's protection and guidance. We protect humanity from supernaturals, but we also protect supernaturals from humanity. And from our world? It's about the only thing I caught from that speech. No, they are from an alternate dimension. She takes a deep breath. The Echo world. It's very similar to our own, but in some ways extremely different. Okay then, I reply, trying to keep my voice steady. It's overwhelming, I know, but it's information you need to know. Rebecca says, there are some supernaturals who don't agree with the terms, and it's also the agency's duty to enforce the rules and hunt down those who don't comply. She shifts slightly. Most of our field agent teams are made up of supernaturals. Normal humans just don't have the ability or strength to take down those supernaturals who go rogue. I take a gulp of my drink. What happens to them, the rogue supernaturals, when you catch them? Her lips purse and her grip wraps around her mug so tight I worry the cup might break. The punishment is not a kind one. You kill them? I ask, her brow arched. She moves her gaze up slowly to mine, sympathy in her eyes. That would be a kindness. She suddenly stands from the bench and gestures for me to follow once again. Are we going to the torture chamber? Back into the facility's corridors. It feels like Rebecca and I have been walking for hours before we finally draw to a stop. We are in front of a pair of thick green steel doors that blockade the entirety of this section of hallway. Two guards stand either side, clad in dark grey combat gear and heavy chainmail vests. Three electronic panels line the wall behind them. The guards stiffen on seeing Rebecca approach, and I can't help but arch my brows in surprise to their tense response to her presence. Then their attention flicks to me, hands reaching towards the batons holstered on their thigh. They're with me, my mother states, and the guards give a nod of reply and instantly relax. Rebecca proceeds to press her thumb against one of the panels, then bends down to the next to scan her eye, and finally presses a selection of odd-looking symbols on the last one. A loud horn echoes throughout the corridor, a red light flashing overhead before the doors make a hissing noise. They begin to swing open slowly. Rebecca tenses, staring ahead as the doors continue to open. I'm not sure you should be seeing this, but I need you to understand the importance of what we do here and the seriousness of it. We continue on down yet another corridor. It's cold, white clouds of breath form in the air and in front of my lips, and the chill sinks into my skin, as deep as the shadows outside the pools of pallid light that illuminate our way. Turning a corner, Rebecca draws to a stop. This is the punishment for those who go rogue.